Hello, this is Kevin Borras. Thanks for joining me on the Smart Mobility Revolution virtual roundtable discussion. I'm joined by Bob McQueen, Michael Ellis, and Ammar Safi, and the discussion continues. But I think that's important that the happiness angle, which wasn't an idea we were going to be talking about until Ammar mentioned it. Michael, how important is that then? Because we're looking at cities that people love living in, oddly, as you've got there, San Francisco, Copenhagen, Barcelona. They're cities that have good public transport authorities. And obviously in the Bay Area, you've got a lot of top ranking mobility pioneers, and not just in smart mobility, but in ITS as well, and smart mobility and autonomous vehicles. It's a transport hotbed. So it must have some correlation.
Well, yeah, I think so. And I mean, I think it's also helpful to make the distinction, between objectively how good is the transport and what is the level of trust, that people have with the government, with the local government or with the service provider, because even if it's not perfect or it's not the greatest, I think people would be very surprised to see the level of happiness that's there if they knew that, hey, they're actually working on it, or they're in communication. It's a important distinction, because then you don't necessarily need to be obsessed about getting it perfect, which I'm an American, so maybe that's maybe I've got a bit of that bias. But if you have that connection with people, I mean, I think it's a very elusive and difficult thing to get right, but it will create the kind of experience that you're looking for anyway, even if you didn't get it perfect the right first time around in terms of the actual service you wanted to deliver.
Okay, so let's move on to something that always interests me, is incentivization. So how do cities, authorities, regions incentivize their citizens to start using the new smart mobility options that are available to them? So Ammar, is in terms of the UAE, is there incentivization for schemes? I mean, I always go back to the same thing. There was a scheme in Scotland where single teenage mothers were encouraged to go to their local health centres, which they weren't going to en masse, and if they did, I think five out of 6 appointments, if they made them, they'd get a voucher for a coffee. And then the attendance of these sessions went up hugely. It's extraordinary, just for a coffee, but it's something free. So is incentivization important?
Free in Scotland, yeah.
Yes, I know. I didn't want to mention that, Bob. I'll let you say that. Okay. But, so it's incentivization and the idea of gamification, of making something an enjoyable experience. So it's the user experience, the UX, if you're into coding. Michael, thanks for that. So in terms of Ammar, was that used in any sort of length in the UAE to incentivize your citizens and people like yourself to actually use smart mobility schemes, or even just increased public transport and getting people out of their cars?
Yes. For example, I have a great example here in UAE that the tolling system for private cars, if you are using the electrical vehicle cars, okay, it will be free of charge. You will not pay for tolling system. However, also Dubai, especially the Dubai Water and Electrical Authorities, they started the initiative that they distribute for public electrical vehicle charger. They distribute or they installed more than 400 or 500, 400 to 500 units in entire Dubai, and it's free of cost. And it's free charging, so you are not paying for renting or refuel the electrical vehicles. There is a lot of intensive in terms of registration. Registration for the electrical vehicle, it's free. It was yes. The intensive is very important to promote the new trend or the new approach for the people. Later on, okay. Also, we keep in our mind one very important factor, that to make your life easier, to make the customer journey of the public people easier. If they compare between their own private car and the public transportation or the smart mobility options, we should win in all factors and all criteria for them in terms of affordability. You cannot make something very fancy and very expensive and nobody can use it, or very small slices, okay, in terms of accessibility, mobility, safety, security, time, saving, comfortable zone, okay, should be it's comfortable as well. So all those factors we are taking it in our consideration during the planning and during the implementation of initiatives. Plus, as I told you at the beginning, okay, once we start with any new, let's say, type of mobility or transport modes, we start with the intensive and rewarding for the public sectors to start using it. And one of the most important thing, it's word of mouth. If today my journey, it was very nice, okay, I will start promoting it without any forcing or by default for the people. And this is what we are looking for actually in our initiatives. Okay.
But one thing that always springs to mind, it's the same, I've used this example many times before, and I apologize again, is I interviewed the mayor of Columbus, Ohio, Michael Ginther, a few, 3 years ago, when Columbus won the Smart City Challenge. And it was really interesting, Andrew Ginther, sorry, Andrew. It was interesting because my knowledge of Columbus, Ohio wasn't huge. And he said there's a large percentage of that city, quite a high percentage, well into double figures, of people who are what he called the unbanked. They have no bank account, they have no digital technology, they have nothing, they just work for cash. And so they're the people that hang around on street corners waiting for trucks to pick them up and take them to a construction job or to digging trenches or whatever. It's extraordinary. This is still going on in the 21st century. But where how important is it for smart mobility schemes to be inclusive and not exclusive, and not, so it has to mean something to everybody. So for the people who don't have bank accounts, they can't be smart and mobile because they don't have the ability to do it. How important is it to keep everybody included in this?
I think one of the keys to inclusion is to understand the user group in more detail. And that's where technology can help us, Kevin, with location intelligence and data from cell phones. We can get a better understanding. And I think it's also important to take that knowledge and then tailor our offerings to suit the individuals. I think a big step towards social equity is to pretty much tailor things for the individual. The marketing experts are now talking about a market segment of one. We're not going to talk about dinkies or baby boomers or whatever, because we don't need to group you anymore. We can tailor things to you as an individual, which, by the way, some local agencies have told me that one of the big problems they have with the groupings is that people always get upset because they think they're in the wrong group. So you avoid all that by basically just not grouping people. And then we can focus in on the individual. We focus in on the information the individual needs and the incentivization that the individual needs. I'm a big fan of rewarding good behavior, like congestion avoidance rewards, rather than penalizing bad behavior. I think rewarding good behavior intuitively seems to work. And I saw some research from the Netherlands recently that reinforces that the findings are that people tend to change their behavior easily when they're getting a reward. And, you said, well, what do I get out of it, Bob? If I take my car 3 days a week and I use public transport for the other 2, then I could say to you, Kevin, well, you're using the electronic payment system, so I know what you're doing. I know your pre-behavior. So I'm going to reward you for changing your behavior for 2 days by giving you free parking downtown on a day of your choice. We can provide conditional rewards based on behavior. Toll agencies too. I suspect most toll agencies, although they would never admit this, do not really want you to shift from toll roads to public transport, right? But they wouldn't
Yeah.
mind spreading the peak. They wouldn't mind saying,
Mhm.
perhaps some of you guys could come a bit earlier or a bit later, but still use our road. And that's where incentive schemes come in. I think we've got to the point where we don't need to worry about the technology working with electronic
Yeah.
payment, but I don't
Yeah.
think we've quite got to the point where we're starting to look at, well, what can we do with it now we've got it? What are
Mhm.
all the strategies?
Yeah, no, you're right. We'll come on to an interesting topic. I'm bringing now. We'll come back to the smart mobility ideas in a minute. But with so many more people working at home over the last year, I've been talking to a lot of companies who are having to spend a lot of money on increasing or improving their cybersecurity and their IT networks, because people are working on some, pretty crucial, secretive stuff, let's say, where from their offices everything was fine, completely unhackable, but they're doing it from home or from their shed, or people are working out of their dining room or their kitchen or extension or whatever, and it's just the security systems aren't there, and it just made me think: is that the same with smart mobility? Are cities afraid of perhaps opening up their security networks to an influx of people with electronic devices?
Well, I'm a big fan of virtual private networks, where you actually create a tunnel that's secure, and I suspect that might be the number one answer to, working from home. Is that people should use a VPN to achieve the connection with the head office. I guess you could also argue that many more locations being distributed might be safer if they're secured properly than one central target, than having everyone in one office and using one
Yeah.
computer. So I think that distributed effect could come to bear as well. But I also want to make the point that physical security is just as important as cybersecurity. There's no
Of course, yeah.
point in having your network defended like Fort Knox and then have some technician wander in with no credentials and access your machine directly. So the
True.
two things need to come together.
Yeah, it's just something that cropped up last week twice from different parts of the world. Both companies saying we've spent a lot of money on securing our staff's sort of personal computers, because they probably took home from the office a year ago, not expecting to still be there a year later. So Ammar, I'm going to come back to you now. What schemes have you been able to implement in Dubai in terms of smart mobility projects and initiatives over the last year? And has the pandemic actually made innovative implementations easier because of the less people around, less traffic? That's been the case across Europe, where cities have said 2 years ago this would have taken us 5 years to even get the mayor to even think about it, and then here we are implementing it within 6 weeks of the idea being thought of. So I'm not suggesting there's nothing good about the pandemic. We all know this, but in terms of idea preparation, has it actually given you some breathing space?
Yes, that's right. Actually, it's a fact. Actually, everywhere the traffic jam it has been reduced, and due to that, we get this chance to do a proper maintenance or a major maintenance for all our infrastructure. So most of the airports cannot be closed, but during the pandemic, if you are using it just one runway out of 3 or 4, so during that we start doing a proper maintenance, for example, or a mega rehabilitation for the airports, and also for the infrastructure. So we are not looking for to build more roads, okay, as much as we are looking to use more to integrate the roads and the right of way with the more mobility modes and transport modes. This is what now our focus and our scheme. However, the autonomous car, let's say the Hyperloop, the air mobility options, all those let's say modes are Now, considering it in our master plan and in our projects, we start doing some assessment for our roads to see how it's capable to integrate with the smart mobility or advanced mobility, let's call it. This is the main target actually for us during COVID. And now it's a fact that most of the companies, they start using, instead of asking people to come to the office 100%, no, he's freely to choose, okay, whether from his home or from in the office. So this impact allow us to work more freely, okay, and to do more projects for integration and to use how it's useful once you are promoting more options. Now people, because of the pandemic that's happened, 2019, they start understand and they start allow us to use the digital information and start moving to digitalization. People before, okay, they are resisting to using digital or the new electronic things. But now it's like a mandatory for them in hospitals, in educations, in even transport. Now nobody, it's more easy for us now to move to the smart city and smart mobility with digitalization, let's say, theme. This is what COVID actually, the benefit of COVID that allow us, okay, to work more freely and to promote our digital initiatives more, let people using it strongly.
Okay, thank you for that. So, Michael, I've been to Vienna on a few occasions. Thankfully, it's a lovely place, but it was voted one of the, I think it's Europe's smartest city, at least one occasion in the last few years. So, what is it that makes Vienna that smart, and what have you seen? And since you haven't been there all that long, but what have you seen in terms of smart mobility applications, in terms of maybe apps or some kind of schemes which inform the citizens, inform travelers of their travel choices before, rather than going to find them, the solutions come to them?
Well, I wish I could answer that question, but I haven't been here long enough, and they've been basically just driving my own car here so far. So I don't have a lot of experience with public infrastructure, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah,
well,
I'll have to answer that question in a couple
It's
months.
very good. Well, I'll recommend it.
My question, Kevin, is how smart were the people that voted?
Who knows? I don't know who votes. I've never found out who votes for the smart city. But I know where you live in France. Well, you've gone from Orlando, or just outside Orlando, to Perpignan. What are you seeing in terms of differences in terms of what smart mobility means? I know you haven't been in where you live very long either, but
there's something weird happens here, Kevin. People walk to different places rather than take the car. And there's very good public transport. The whole city is livable. It's a very historic city. We can walk 10 minutes to the TGV station and then get to anywhere in Europe within about 4.5 hours. We can walk 10 minutes the other way and get to the city center. So it's a very walkable city. And I think, I don't know, maybe some American cities are not that walkable. I used to work for a company in the UK, and my boss got sent to the US, and he decided to get out of his hotel one morning and go for a walk. And the police pulled over and asked him if he was okay. The fact that he was walking, so that kind of summed it up.
I've had that.
I think there are pros and cons. I think if you look around the world, I don't think there's a single smart city. I don't think there's one single city that's smart in all departments. But some cities are good at one thing, some cities are good at another. And we're seeing a rollout of kind of smartness, if you like, as things happen. Yeah. I'm also kind of concerned that we don't really have a definition of a smart city. No one seems to be able to nail it down. There's not an ISO standard that defines a smart city, although there is the BSI publicly available spec that kind of has a go at it. But I think we should focus on that a little bit, the way we're trying to define success. I mean, if you say to a mayor what's success and he says, I want to have a smart city, then he needs to be able to know what he's talking about.
Yeah. So what is it? Let's define it. Let's before we finish, let's define what a smart city is. I remember you saying before that to you a smart city is if you poke it with a stick, it reacts, right? That's your definition, isn't it?
Poke it with a stick, it reacts appropriately.
Appropriately, yes.
Yeah, that's important, because if someone's throwing stones at you, you shouldn't shoot them.
That's inappropriate. Yes. So if you ask it a question,
right,
you get back an answer that's useful to you. It may not be the answer you want, but it's an answer that's useful.
Right. So it's kind of light-hearted analogy. If you know you live in a smart city, if you poke it with a stick and it reacts appropriately. But what that means is a smart city should be able to sense threats and opportunities, changes in demand, changes in operating conditions. It should know. And then, just knowing is not good enough. You have to be able to analyze it. And that's where you need the intelligence to decide what an appropriate reaction should be.
Yeah.
If we know that a snowstorm is going to bring the roads to a halt, then maybe we need to increase the frequency of the underground railway, the metro. And by the way, that gets back to agility, because how agile are we going to be at doing that, right?
Yeah, no, quite.
I think these things are kind of key. Just very simple things like understanding, what do we mean by a smart city? What do we mean by smart mobility? I mean, to me, Sam Palmisano, who was the chairman of IBM at the time, stood up at an ITS America annual meeting in Houston in 2013 and said it all. He said, IBM have been in the business of systems for over 100 years. We kind of know what a system is, and it consists of the following. It's adaptable, it's connected, it has clarity of purpose, and you can monitor its status at any given time. So I've made a point of taking those 4 simple points and applying them to transportation around the world. And I don't think there is a system around the world really operating like a system.
No, I was there for that. I remember that. That was one of the best sort of. It was the opening ceremony, wasn't it?
Yeah, Houston.
Yeah, 2010. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, I like that. So, Michael, what's a smart city to you, and what is smart mobility within it?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's kind of this ability, right, to define on the fly what kind of experience you want to have. In other words, the reason I think it's maybe difficult to come up with a universal definition is the whole point is that it should be different for different people, because people have they're in different situations, they have different desired outcomes. You know? But to the extent to which we can measure that level of interactivity, I mean, I think we can kind of approximate. We can do some comparisons, and we can say, this is what they're up to in various cities around the world. In fact, I think maybe we should do a couple of videos on that, like what's going on in various cities, and just that process of comparison. I mean, you can get the feel, okay, they're moving in the direction of smart mobility, and here are the various situations there, but no one smart city or smart mobility solution is going to look alike, because the whole point is, you define for yourself as a user what your experience is going to be.
Yeah, and each cities are different too. Because what works in London isn't necessarily going to work in Johannesburg, or cities that are divided by rivers. There's your common theme. And other cities, it's not the it's the cities with bridges, cities with rivers or lakes or populations that have clusters. It has to be done differently. Sorry, Bob.
I can't remember how many bridges there are in London, 1720 or something like that. But a few years ago, some bright sparks decided to close 7 of them at the same time for maintenance.
Yes.
And that's when the concept of regional coordination was born. It was quite interesting.
Yes, wasn't the brightest idea. But again, then you've got the problem with London. Of course, you have all the boroughs, and all the boroughs don't have to sort of disagree with each other. They're having to consult. So you have there's a one point in a part of London called Crystal Palace. There's one
Yep.
point where 5 London boroughs meet at one point,
Mm-hmm.
and you can actually stand in 5 London boroughs at once. And they often have the same thing where Borough of Lewisham and the Borough of Southwark roadworks at the same time on the same road, but different boroughs, and it's an absolute nightmare. So okay, I'm going to ask.
What you're hitting there, Kevin, is one of the important tension points in smart mobility. In fact, most planning, and that is on the one hand, you want tight local control and response, so you want the borough, but on the other hand, you want to swim like a school of fish. You've got your choice, but you need to swim together for benefit. So if we can pull off this swimming like a school of fish, then we become a smart city.
Nice. That should be it. We'll get the T-shirts done, Bob, I promise you.
Cool.
So,
now, Kevin, before you wrap up, this is a unique opportunity because we've got, apart from Shafia, who unfortunately couldn't join us, we have the content matter experts, the content management guys, and the subject matter experts together on the same call for our body of knowledge.
yes.
So I think it's good to recognize that I guess there's a couple of ways of looking at this, viewers. You can think these are the wonderful guys responsible, or these are the villains that created the body of knowledge. So, remember these faces, because you'll be encounter them again when we come to move our body of knowledge into reality. And by the way, we're working hard on the chapters, on the visuals, on the immersive publishing right now, and it's coming soon. Isn't that right, Kevin?
It is. Before the end of the year, there will be a body of knowledge, and I will stop calling it a book because it's far more than that. But we did actually coin a term, the idea of evergreen content, which I've never come across. So
that was Michael's term.
Yes,
I was calling it.
I realized that, but the idea that of the video and the audio content can change at a blink of an eye, but the evergreen content can't. But obviously online it can. But any printed content, once it's out, and you've probably got 3 or 4 months of.
Well, we're also being
longevity.
selective in what we want to put in the book is very much evergreen, that will stand the test of time. Best practices, the right way to do things that doesn't change very much, regardless of whether you're building a bridge or building an IT network, right?
Yep.
But then we know there's going to be other things, new technologies. We're almost tempted to write the book in pencil because the minute we're finished it, there would need to be changes.
Yeah.
But we're not going to do that. We're going to publish it as a milestone. But then we're going to do additional immersive material, video, virtual roundtables like this one, website, and also publish tools that can't be put into books because they move, they're dynamic.
Yes.
And
exactly.
do things that will complement the book. Things that will bring it even more to life. You've got the central core, the nucleus, which is the book, and then the body of material around it. And altogether that forms the body of knowledge. I guess we need to come up with a better term than buck, because as I mentioned to you the other day, when we do it the second time round, it'll be a buck, and that doesn't sound too good.
Yes, no, we need to. Anyone's got any ideas how we can improve the phrase body of knowledge, then please do. But I want to finish with Ammar. So, as someone who actually works in a ministry, chartered with the idea of implementing smart mobility schemes, what is smart mobility to you? You're involved in this every day. This is what you do for a living. What is smart mobility in your definition?
It's a critical question, actually. Okay,
I should have asked it first, really. But...
Yeah, let me simplify it, actually. Smart mobility, for me, it's people, whatever they are thinking about the mobility, or in any way, either it's futuristic trends or digital, or even the micro mobility or software mobility, it's applicable for everyone. And it's actually, once he tried this type of mobility modes, okay, he's satisfied with the delivery. So smart mobility, it's to achieve the highest satisfaction rate for the public user and for the private and economy.
Nice. That's succinct. That's on the back of the T-shirt. Okay, perfect.
And by the way, Kevin, one key element of success, I can't remember the guy's name, German philosopher said you should always hire people smarter than you, but not too smart so you can still understand them. And I thought that was a brilliant quote, but I've now a little suspicious of the guy because I read another quote from him that said he was continuing to be amazed that the holes in the fur of a cat always lined up with the eyes.
Yes, well, it's a freak of nature. There must be some cats where that doesn't work. We just don't know. But what a great way to end. Thank you very much. So, so to Michael and to Ammar, thank you very much. Go on, Ammar.
Yeah, I would like to add one thing. Maybe
about cats. Not about cats.
Yeah, maybe small initiative or very old initiatives. People that are not using it anymore. Okay, you start using it in specific sectors for the mobility. Okay, it has a great influence and a great impact. This is one of the smart mobility tools. Okay, not only you people always link the smart terminology with the digital things. So it's not only the smart, it's mean digital. No, could be active or could be passive component. You can use it for smart mobility.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Appropriate technology. And, you know, Kevin and I have already had this discussion. I believe that the original autonomous vehicle was the horse, or in your case, the camel, Ammar. So, you know, we've got a long way to go to catch up with nature.
Good point. Well, we discussed fish. We already discussed the idea of fish.
Yep.
Now, how schools of fish work. Look at the way that flocks of birds work, and they don't even touch each other in extraordinary formations. That has to be the way we look at transport modes in the future. Well, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciated your time. Hopefully, viewers, you've got something out of that. If you haven't got something out of that, it's probably my fault. But if you want to find out more, Bob, can I contact you? More information?
Why not? Absolutely. I'll take the blame, Kevin. Yeah.
So that's Bob at bobmcqueenandassociates.com. That's Mc, not Mac. So
yep,
bmcqueenandassociates.com.
And it's one of those seemed like a good idea at the time things when I created the email address. It's obviously too long, but I'm kind of stuck with it now.
But yeah, it's fine. It's perfectly fine.
But fortunately, with technology, you only have to remember it once, right? Because then your system remembers it for you.
Yes, thank you, Gmail. Excellent. And other email providers are out there. It's not an advert for Google. So thank you very much indeed for your time, and thanks for watching. And you'll catch us again soon on the Smart Mobility Revolution Part 3. Thank you.